I kept seeing it first from the water. Every time I crossed the Bosphorus, this extravagant white building would appear along the European shore, stretched out beside the sea with impossible confidence. From the ferry, it looked like a luxury resort, some Ottoman Sheraton with better taste, a place where wealthy people might sip coffee under chandeliers and pretend the Bosphorus had been privately arranged for them. I took several photographs of it without knowing what it was. It kept appearing between waves, gulls, ferry smoke, and blue water, almost too grand to be merely another building. Only later, almost accidentally, I saw an advert for a hop-on, hop-off bus tour and noticed the name Dolmabahçe Palace. The photograph matched the mysterious building I had been admiring from the boats. I had already done most of the other Istanbul pilgrimage, Hagia Sophia, Topkapı, Basilica Cistern, Galata, the European side, the Asian side, several boat rides. I did not need the bus tour. The tram and metro could take me close enough. So I decided that the next day I would go and finally meet the building properly, not as a silhouette from the sea, but face to face. The entrance itself was very Istanbul. First security, then ticket. Before even buying the ticket, there was the familiar ritual. Queue, bag, scanner, x-ray machine, guards, airport atmosphere. Istanbul seems to have a special relationship with security. You go to a bazaar, there is a scanner. You go to a palace, there is a scanner. You go somewhere that looks harmless, and still there is a scanner. It is slightly unnerving, but also in a strange way, calming. Personally, I would rather wait the extra time if it means stopping one deranged person from destroying innocent lives. Then came the ticket, which felt like a small financial ambush. The Turks, of course, pay a nominal fee. The foreigner pays the welcome to our heritage price, and then I entered. Immediately, the palace overwhelmed me. The sea-facing facade I had admired from the boat was only the beginning. Up close, the whole place glittered with a kind of imperial nervousness. The gardens were manicured almost to perfection, the white gates carved like lace, the columns rising with theatrical seriousness. There were flowers, polished paths, ornamental lamps, peacocks wandering around with the entitlement of minor princes, and tourists holding phones in every direction. I saw at least a couple of proposals, and thankfully the women said yes, because refusing in that setting would have been a diplomatic incident. Inside, the palace became almost absurd in its abundance. Gold, crystal, silver, red carpets, chandeliers, painted ceilings, mirrors, carved doors, heavy curtains, polished floors. Even the radiators and toilets seemed to have been touched by opulence. Room after room opened into another room, each one determined not to be outdone by the previous one. The staircases were not merely staircases, they were declarations. The chandeliers were not merely lights, they were arguments. The ceilings were so decorated that looking up became its own activity, almost a neck exercise in admiration. What struck me most was how different it felt from Topkapı. Topkapı had felt older, quieter, more strategic. It had the atmosphere of an empire that knew exactly what it was, powerful, self-contained, confident enough not to shout. Its courtyards and views made sense. It sat like a command center, almost a fortress of statecraft and dynasty. Dolmabahçe, by contrast, felt like performance. Magnificent performance, yes, but performance all the same. It seemed to say, look at us, we can do European grandeur too. Look at our columns, our halls, our crystal staircase, our chandeliers, our salons, our velvet, our imported drama. And that is where my admiration became uneasy. I am Muslim and I read a lot, but somehow I have never properly read Ottoman history in detail. I know fragments, names, battles, reforms, decline, hearsay, the usual scattered pieces. Istanbul has been forcing those fragments to rearrange themselves in my head. Walking through Dolmabahçe, I could not help wondering whether I was looking at a masterpiece or a symptom. This was not the confident early empire expanding across continents. This was the late empire, already under pressure, already losing territories, already trying to negotiate with modernity, nationalism, European power, debt, internal reform, and the slow unraveling of its old order. And yet here was this palace by the sea, glittering as if nothing was wrong. Of course, it would be childish to say one palace brought down a 500-year empire. History is never that neat. Empires do not die because of chandeliers, but buildings reveal priorities. They reveal mood. They reveal anxiety. Dolmabahçe felt to me like a palace built at sunset, dazzling, expensive, beautiful, and faintly tragic. The empire was losing pieces of itself, but the center was dressing itself in gold. The Sultan's mother had rooms upon rooms, the wives had rooms upon rooms, the ceremonial halls were vast. The whole place seemed designed to resist decline by sheer decoration. There is something deeply human about that, perhaps. When power becomes uncertain, it often reaches for spectacle. When the foundations begin to shift, people polish the ceiling. Maybe that is unfair, but it was the thought that followed me from hall to hall. I looked at the red carpets and crystal lamps and wondered what else that money could have built. Schools, factories, railways, military reforms, institutions, hospitals, administrative systems. Perhaps some of those things were being built too, but standing inside Dolmabahçe, one could smell the mismatch, grandeur at the center, fragility at the edges. The most haunting rooms were not necessarily the grandest. The grand halls dazzled, but after a while the eye almost became tired of luxury. What stayed with me were the views through blue-tinted windows, the Bosphorus framed like a painting, the sea outside calm and indifferent. From inside the palace, the water looked impossibly beautiful, as if the world itself had been arranged for Ottoman melancholy. I imagined the late sultans looking out at that same water, watching ships pass, knowing that beyond the gates the century was changing faster than the palace could absorb. Then there was Ataturk's room, the room where he died. That added another layer entirely. The palace began as an imperial statement and ended up holding the deathbed of the man who founded the republic that replaced the empire. There is a strange historical compression in that. Dolmabahçe becomes not only a palace, but a bridge between Ottoman ending and Turkish beginning. A place built to display imperial splendor becomes a republican shrine of sorts. The building outlived the system that built it, and perhaps that is its saving grace. Whatever its original vanity, whatever its political blindness, whatever extravagance it represented, Dolmabahçe is now printing money for modern Turkey. The empire spent the fortune, the republic collects the ticket fees. There is almost a dark comedy in that. What may have been a late imperial overreach now sustains the tourist economy. The chandeliers have become assets, the rooms have become roots, the carpets have become content. Even my blurry phone photos, interrupted by the red warning of not enough storage to back up, became part of the modern ritual. A tourist trying to preserve the remains of an empire while his own device complains it has no more room for memory. That little warning amused me afterwards. Not enough storage to back up. What a perfect caption for Dolmabahçe, an empire full of memory, running out of space to preserve itself. A palace built to store prestige, ceremony, dynasty, European imitation, Islamic sovereignty, modern anxiety, and still in the end, not enough storage to back up the whole thing. I left impressed, but not simply impressed. I left with admiration mixed with discomfort. Dolmabahçe is one of the most beautiful buildings I have ever seen, but it is not a simple beauty. It is excessive, theatrical, wounded, magnificent. It is not just architecture, it is an argument made in marble and gold. It is an empire saying, "We are still here," at the very moment history was preparing to answer, "Not for long."